Hello, my name is Taylor.
And I am Ray. And the cycle begins anew, yes.
That's Peyton.
It begins again, a new series, and now we're gonna play Starbound for a while, and maybe focus on it a little bit. There is all the dead time, yes, we will get distracted. No, we absolutely will. But for starters, I can talk a little bit about Starbound because it's really fascinating. The game is actually an amazing concept on paper, or in theory, but then winds up being this just extreme disappointment. The game is, you're a space explorer in a procedurally generated universe. Every planet is different, it's full of aliens, there's all kinds of different ores, and you're supposed to progress through the technology to build up bigger and better ship-related stuff, and you have mechs to ride around in, and you have all this different armor and equipment. But beyond the basics, the game doesn't know who or what it is, so it sort of falls apart. And as the developers went along, because they didn't know what the game was supposed to be, they never really got any focus nailed down, and then eventually gutted a bunch of the things that made the game interesting and really set it apart. They pulled out a whole bunch of the lore, they added in stuff that was really kind of lame in comparison, they got rid of a bunch of technology options, and I don't know, I hear a lot of stories from people who used to really like the game, but then hated what it became.
Of course, none of us have actually played this game before, so we missed out on all the fun that came before.
Yeah, but I actually played the game solo for a little while, and what I learned is that you can pretty much get to the end of the game now in no time at all. Basically a day. All you do is just go down to the first planet, drill to the core, collect all the stuff, then go to the next planet, drill down to the core, collect all your ore, and by the time you've done that 6 times, you're at the top of the tech tier.
There is still a lot of game to play, of course.
Yeah, basically there's a huge sandbox for you to still play in, but everything is really for its own sake. You could build anything you wanted, and it's like Terraria, but their building mechanics are better in my opinion. But why would you? How does it facilitate the game? How does it advance what you're doing? It doesn't. For example, I mentioned that there were mechs, there's robots that you can pilot, but all you use the mechs for in the vanilla game is space missions to collect more mech parts to make a bigger and better mech. And the question is why, because there's no overarching reason for it.
Some people we talked to compared the game to Nyquil. They said that they like to play this game when they want to go to bed.
'Cause it's repetitive and really doesn't matter, there's no stakes whatsoever. So, we thought that for a Let's Play thing, what that would boil down to is just us going through the cycle until eventually we got bored, because there's no endgame in sight. So instead, we installed a whole bunch of mods, and by a whole bunch of mods, we mean one mod, Frackin' Universe, which has a stupid, ridiculous amount of stuff in it.
Yes, so those of you who are joining us and have never seen Starbound before, welcome to not actually Starbound, because that's what you're gonna see.
On the bright side, it's really easy to make our avatar, so we're excited about that. My little character looks just like me, and Peyton's gonna join us, and she has a character that looks just like her.
And I don't want to play.
And Taylor is a stick in the mud she doesn't want to play.
I got a little sick of procedurally generated games after Minecraft.
I still think that Starbound is actually interesting to play, and it's fun, particularly with the mod, because the mod does add a lot of stuff to it. But I don't know, these kind of games, they really do capture a particular audience. People with friends, yes. Yeah, people who have people to play with. The worst of society, yes. Yeah, games like this are always better with friends, because your friends then get to see whatever stuff you build, and there's more point to actually caring about what you build.
You could also play on a big public server, but let's be honest, you're not nearly as good as the best guys there.
Too many people means that there's too much competition. It's gotta be a small group of friends.
Or you can be that guy who prides himself on just putting a lot of work into something really crappy.
Yeah, that guy who builds just a giant monolithic tower of solid bricks, that's always great.
I mean, a lot of servers ban people for stuff like that.
But it is actually great. It's kind of like, like a resistance art piece. How dare you try to tell us what is and is not beauty, yes! Yeah, putting a barrier to entry on being good at building stuff in an online game? What are you, Hitler?
You'd think Hitler of all people couldn't tell you who is and is not a good artist.
Yeah, he couldn't even get into art school.
Right, so
the guy's a big hypocrite.
Anyway, so games like this are alright for the internet too, because the stuff that you build is going to be seen by not just your friends, but the people who you show this video to.
In our case, an audience of hundreds.
Yeah, which justifies the many hours that are spent dumping into creating a house. A fictional house.
You say it like we were gonna do something more important with our lives or with our time.
I don't know, think about if you spent that time on real house improvement.
I mean, for one, I rent, and for two, Like, even if I dumped all that time, I would just have a ruined house, which would depreciate the value.
Well, maybe, alright, you spend the first couple of hours learning how to actually improve your house.
Man, I gotta take classes for that, and otherwise I take the risk of doing things on the internet. There's no way. And you gotta get permits. You gotta bribe people for permits, yes. Or you gotta give them money. I mean, come on, Taylor. This is why people play video games, because you can do fun stuff without having to bribe people for a city permit.
Pretty sure you just wait for a permit.
Yeah, but time is money. So you're still losing money in the long run. Plus, you know, if you give Ray a hammer and nails, she's gonna go to the hospital with a nail in her thumb. Yes. Yeah, again.
When was this?
Well, do you remember when they had that big art competition and I said, man, I don't need skill. You know, I don't need people telling me the barrier to entry. And I tried to, like, nail a toaster together with some other toasters. Well, toasters don't nail very well, and I slipped, and the nails slipped. Blood everywhere, yes. Yeah, I still entered the piece.
Did you win?
No, but I got a prize for most avant-garde. It was like a gift card for a fast food place. They were sponsors for the event, yes.
Hey, see? You know, blood, sweat, and thumbs, they pay off.
The hospital bill was like 700 nanos, so it really didn't.
Oh. Well, that's too bad. You should have stitched it up yourself. You see, if you put a lot of hours into learning first aid and field medicine, then you would be fine.
I mean, then I'd have to go to the hospital for botching up a field medicine job.
Well, you'd get your head around it after a few trials and errors.
Man. Okay, so anyway, back on the game. So, the mod actually recontextualizes the main story mode just a little bit. Like, it changes some of the dialogue, and I don't know if the main story is different. But the actual story quest revolves around going from planet to planet and taking pictures of furniture. It's actually really dull. There's bosses at the end, yes. Yeah, there's missions where you go and you fight these bosses, but otherwise it's pretty underwhelming. But before we do any of that, Peyton and I have got to get established, which means building a house and collecting all the resources to appropriately build a house. We're also playing on survival mode, which means that we need food and we've got to do farming. And who knows what all else we're gonna get into. Dying and collecting our things, especially you, Ray, yes? Oh yeah, on survival mode, you have no option but to drop all your stuff whenever you die, so you have to run back down and collect it all.
That sounds like ass. Why are you playing like that?
'Cause you can't get the food mechanic without playing ass mode.
Man, I don't get that at all. You know...
Like I say, it's a game that has a lot of really great stuff going for it on paper, but they have no idea what they're doing or where they're going, so... You know, it's an order of ass, with a side of cool ideas, yes. Yeah, pretty much. Like, there's a side order of really cool ideas, and they put that in the advertising, and you're like, oh man, that's awesome. And then when you start playing, you're like, oh man, this is super disappointing. Oh, another thing they had were a bunch of different technologies. And apparently they were all really cool and really diverse, and you could do a lot of different things with them, but you could only equip one technology. So at one point they said, you know what, we don't like this anymore. So they reduced it to where you had 3 technologies to choose from only, but you could equip all 3 simultaneously. So
they had a ton of variety and then just cut it out of the game?
Yeah, for balance reasons, they said. I don't actually know the reason. One of them is the morph ball from Metroid, yes? Yeah, some of them are just objectively worthless. Like, the morph ball thing is funny because there's not really a lot of, like, generated stuff where you would use the morph ball. So, you can just turn into a morph ball.
I guess that one's a bit of an homage. Homage?
Homage. But yeah, I don't know. That's one of your 3 tech slots and you gotta use it, so you get that.
You know what I think the problem is, fundamentally? It's that it's difficult to make an exploration-based game, period. Because if you're not procedurally generated, then the player's gonna see everything on their first playthrough. They don't need to play again. But if it's procedurally generated, then everything is following sort of an algorithm, and you get to know the algorithm's pattern, so everything starts to get samey.
Yeah. The game does a good job, though, by throwing in a bunch of, like, temples and other types of things that might show up randomly. And these are hard set pieces, which, you know, again, you see them once and you've seen them all. But they would be full of little things, and you can scan every little object and your character will say something about it. And there also used to be more lore, which has been added in by this mod, so we're gonna actually get to see that lore. But the vanilla game cut the lore out. For some reason.
There was another game, right? Called No Man's Sky, and it kind of flopped. It was the same general idea. Procedurally generated universe.
Yeah, that flopped for a bunch of reasons. They also made a lot of promises that never came true. I think with this game, they didn't necessarily promise anything. It was just kind of all implied by what was there. and people thought that if they got more time to develop, they would make the game into something bigger than what it was, rather than gutting out all the content and making it smaller. I heard that one of the lore writers quit the team, yes, so they just got rid of all of her lore because they didn't know where she was going with any of it, yes. Huh. Well, that's too bad that they didn't just try to develop on what she wrote.
I guess better to do that than besmirch her vision.
I mean, I don't know if you like losing something from the bigger picture. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and stop it now, and that's probably enough complaining about the game, because we could really rail on a lot of different things. But in the next episode, we're gonna focus on either what we're actually doing in the game, or on nothing having to do with the game.
Probably the latter.
Yep, probably the latter. So thanks for playing with us, everybody. Also, we got a comic about us. If you want to read that, there's a link in the description. And we really appreciate your support on Patreon. It is how we keep things together. So if you want to support us there, we really appreciate that. Otherwise, you guys have a great day.